Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday. Let's dive right into it. I have a question from Mohammed Usman. Old gold Rolex Sub or AP Safari? We'll appreciate it if you answer this question in the next episode of Q&A Tuesday. So to me, the answer is simple. I'm going to say AP Safari. And again, as you know, I'm biased. I happen to like Audemars Piguet. It's my favorite brand. So I'm going to go with the AP Safari over old gold Rolex. To answer your question for you, you have to take into consideration two factors. How well do you want people to see what you're wearing on your wrist? By putting on an old gold Rolex, it will be undoubtedly recognizable from afar. Everybody will know you have an expensive watch, and at that, the #1 selling brand in the world, Rolex, the #1 recognized brand in the world. When you put on the AP Safari, again, because of the hexagon bezel, most people will recognize it from afar, saying, oh, this guy's got an AP. They may not particularly be able to see that it's an AP Safari, but they're gonna know you have an AP on. But nevertheless, it's a lot more subtle, it's a lot less flashy than an old gold Rolex Sub. So just ask yourself a question. Do you wanna be flashy? Do you want people to know, hey, I'm wearing an expensive watch, a gold Rolex, which there's nothing wrong with that? Or do you wanna be a little more subtle and know that, hey, I have an AP, and by the way, they're priced around the same price range, so, you know, whether it's a gold Rolex or a stainless steel Safari, the question you have to ask yourself is, do I wanna be flashy, or would I like to be a little more subtle? Next question is from the gaming cyborg. How well does the Roger Dubuis Excalibur Pirelli hold its value? I kind of like this question because I touched upon Roger Dubuis and them reinventing their brand in the last episodes. And I got to tell you, the Pirelli is going to hold its value a heck of a lot better versus some of the older models and all the issues that Roger Dubuis had in the past, which I talked about in the last episode. You guys can check that out. With the introduction of the new Lamborghini models that they just came out with, that's going to even help the cause even better. It's part of that new reinvented Roger Dubuis brand. It looks unbelievably nice. It's a beautiful watch. The movement quality is superb. So yes, your Pirelli Roger Dubuis will hold its value to the tune of what? Well, it's no longer going to resell at pennies on the dollars like some of the older Roger Dubuis. You can pick up some of the older models for 20 to 25 cents on a dollar, while the Pirelli, if you want to get out there and get it new, you're going to pay 25 to 35% off. So when you go to resell it, it's going to resell at around that halfway mark. Now I know it sounds crappy, but in reality, if you pick up the watch at 30 off and you sell it at 45 to 50 off, you haven't really lost an abnormal amount of money. So this watch will resell much, much better than some of the older predecessors. Here's a really good one. Comes from a gentleman named Nim Parvin. Again, apologize if I messed up your name. But the question is, what are your thoughts on Omega Silver Snoopy and its crazy pricing? Well, as you know, Omega, specifically the Omega Speedmaster. Omega has produced a ton of limited editions. Probably the most popular one would be the Omega Speedmaster Snoopy. Now the reason I like this question is because it gives me a chance to talk a little bit of history about the whole Snoopy, NASA / Omega history behind all of this. Now if you're a Speedmaster aficionado, you know a thing or two about NASA. Now first in 1968, NASA introduced the Snoopy icon as sort of that watchdog that would watch over the pilots that would go into space. It was on their patches, it was on their uniform, it was even on some of the equipment within the spaceships. That very same year, NASA decided to use the Snoopy pin as sort of the appreciation award to contractors, employees of NASA, not necessarily those that went into space, as sort of a recognition award. It came with a certificate, a framed certificate of Snoopy, and each one of those Snoopy pins has been flown into outer space. And not so oddly, Charles Schulz, the guy that created the famous Peanuts comic, he actually allowed NASA to use the Snoopy absolutely free. He was a supporter of the space program. He didn't charge him a dime to utilize the famous Beagle as their icon. So now on to a little bit of history. In 1969, the Apollo 10 mission flew to the moon. They needed to do some final checks for the following mission, which was the Apollo 11, to land on the moon. The Apollo 10 mission required the lunar module to check the moon's surface from nearby and quote-unquote snoop around. Basically to find a good landing site for Apollo 11. Because of this, Apollo 10 crew named the LM Snoopy. the Apollo command module was nicknamed Charlie Brown. Now fast forward to 1970, and the Apollo 13 mission was meant to bring another team of NASA guys to the moon. I think it was Lovell, Swigert, and Hayes. Now the mission objective was to explore a certain area on the moon called the Fromuro Formation. It didn't get that far as there was an explosion on board the service module at approximately 200,000 miles away from Earth. Now, NASA Ground Control came up with a solution at the end which required the astronauts to get creative with some materials on board. After fixes were made and all systems worked more or less again, the crew started their journey to Earth. This is the really quick version of the story, of course. The entire adventure is depicted in the 1995 movie Apollo 13. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen it. If you haven't, check that movie out. It really is a great movie. Actually stars one of my favorite movie stars, Tom Hanks. And by the way, Tom Hanks is like an avid Speedmaster, where ever since that he did that movie, he's been wearing nothing but Omega Speedmasters. Go figure. Now comes the part where the Speedmaster played an important role. They actually needed the Omega Speedmaster watch first to time the ignition of the rockets to shorten the estimated length of return to Earth, and secondly to time the ignition of the rockets to decrease the speed and raise the flight path angle for re-entry into the Earth atmosphere. The second operation was crucial since any mistake in the timing could have led to an incorrect entry angle and as a result potential disaster for the entire crew. On October 5th, 1970, NASA gave the Omega Speedmaster a Snoopy Award to acknowledge the crucial role the watch played in the Apollo 13 mission. In fact, to answer your question, the answer to your question is actually really, really simple. The Omega Snoopy Speedmaster is an absolute iconic timepiece. It's like the James Bond Rolex. And even though in 2003 they made an edition of 5,144 pieces, I think. Now, although it seems like 5,441 pieces is a huge addition to make for a limited edition, nevertheless, there's still a lot more demand than there is supply, and that's why the prices are climbing. So supply and demand, you're a victim of that, and you're a victim of all the fanatics of NASA and Apollo missions and so on and so forth, because everybody would want to have that watch on their wrist. Hope that makes sense. Oh, speaking of Omega, here's a question from Chris. Hello from Weehawken. How you doing? What are your thoughts on Omega watches, specifically the Planet Ocean line? Love the channel. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Well, Chris, as far as Omega is concerned, I don't look at Omega any less than I look at a Rolex NAP or a Richard Mille. I don't discriminate when it comes to watches. I'm one of those guys that buys what he likes first and foremost. And fortunately, I like all watches. I don't care if it's a $2,000 Omega or $120,000 Richard Mille. But I like the option of being able to pick up a quality-made Swiss watch with a whole lot of history for under $5,000. You know who buys those Omega watches from me? I get a lot of kids coming out of college. I get a lot of graduation gifts. I get a lot of younger professionals that come here and say, listen, I want a good watch. I want a quality-made Swiss watch with a name behind it as well as history behind it, but I have under $5,000 to spend. And Planet Ocean is actually going to be one of those watches that I'm going to reach for to sell to some of that younger crowd. Why? Because it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's a lot more sporty looking. It's just a cool watch overall, especially when you're talking about the ones with orange bezels or the bright blue bezels and the bright blue dials. Very sporty, very cool looking watch for a young guy. Now, does that mean older people don't buy Omegas or Planet Oceans? Absolutely they do. But I'm just speaking from experience. A majority of that entry-level Omegas from the Planet Ocean line go to younger professional, younger guys, college graduates, the ones that love watches, but not exactly in a position yet to spend $10,000 or more on a particular timepiece. Last but not least, let's see, what else do we have? This question comes again from a gentleman whose question I answered before, named Kuba Cartas. What is your opinion about brand ambassadors? Do you think celebs like Beckham, 1 year promoting Breitling, and Tudor 2 years later, actually do the brand image any good? Well, here's where we kind of hit a gray area, and because there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to watches. I think that's one of the things that the watch manufacturers haven't figured out yet. Now, the general goal when it comes to marketing is to be in somebody's face with your product, and hopefully with somebody famous that people can relate to and say, oh, Beckham is wearing a Tudor or a Breitling. I definitely want that Breitling. And there's another way where they use brand ambassadors. They actually make limited editions for them, like the LeBron watch or the Shaquille O'Neal watch, or like the AP Jay-Z watch. And again, I'm mentioning AP because I happen to love AP. Of course, Hublot made numerous watches for soccer players. Omega used Cindy Crawford. Find somebody that people absolutely love that has a humongous following around the world of just people that basically like them. I don't mean just followers on Instagram, although these guys have millions. If you think of modern day soccer players, the first name that's going to pop into your head is going to be Beckham. After that, of course, you got guys like Piguet, and you got guys like Maradona, who is currently the ambassador for Hublot. Although after his last fiasco at the last game with the double middle fingers and the fact that he's not 100% sober, and anytime he's on camera, I don't know how well that's doing for Hublot, but it doesn't really matter. These people are in the limelight, and when they're in the limelight and they're wearing your product, people are gonna want that product, bottom line. I'm not a huge celebrity. I have a whopping 40,000 subscribers on my Instagram, which is the social media that I started initially. I don't have a whole lot of subscribers here, but nevertheless, I somehow end up having an effect on those that watch my videos or those that see my posts. I put a watch up on Instagram, I get 1 million WhatsApps from friends, from previous customers. Hey, how much is that? Is that your watch? Are you wearing that watch? Are you selling that watch? Blah, 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 blah. Of course, these watches are all for sale. So with the tiny, tiny popularity that I happen to have, which doesn't even come close to comparing to that of Beckham or any other movie star, I managed to be able to sell a product to a consumer. So imagine how powerful Beckham is by wearing a Breitling for 1 year. I guarantee you that whatever Breitling Beckham wore for that 1 year, the sales of that particular Breitling probably doubled that year. And when he moved on to Tudor, guess what? Those Tudor sales went up just the same. I guarantee you Tudor and Breitling paid him a ton of money in order to do this. And would they really spend millions of dollars for someone like Beckham if it wasn't effective? Of course they wouldn't. It's business. I would not hire a celebrity for my particular business, let's say to promote luxurybazaar.com, if the results weren't effective. If somebody like Beckham gave me a shout out on Instagram tomorrow, said, hey, I picked up this great watch from Roman, you should go check this guy out, not only will my followers quadruple at the same time, but so will my sales. So yes, celebrities are extremely effective. Now, Shaquille O'Neal, to me personally, is probably one of the most lovable celebrities out there. There's not a bad bone in this guy's body. You see Shaquille O'Neal, even doing the little powder commercials, he's still appealing to me, even though it's a corny commercial. However, they made a 48 millimeter offshore Shaquille O'Neal in stainless steel, and then they made another one in white gold with a diamond bezel. Well, it was somewhat of a flop. It came out around the time where limited edition APs were going through the roof. Montoya's was selling for $30,000, double its retail. Baricello's was selling for $45,000, et cetera, et cetera. However, Shaquille O'Neal was not doing as well. The original retail, I think, on a stainless steel watch was around $20,000. They were selling for about $25,000, which is still not bad. It was still selling with retail, but not as good as some of the other guys. Why? Because it wasn't very wearable. Yes, I understood the concept behind making it 48 millimeters. I understand the concept about making it huge and the fact that they flip-flop the 2 and the 3, hence his number on his jersey. But how do you wear a 48 millimeter offshore? Not everybody can swing that. So they, right there and then, they limited themselves to the number of people that would actually buy that watch. Again, 48 millimeter diamond bezel watch. Not everybody likes to wear diamond bezel watches. And again, it's a humongous watch, and it's extremely heavy in white gold. They did a great job by picking Shaquille O'Neal as quote-unquote an ambassador, but at the same token, made the watch for him that kind of flopped. Now, you want to talk about basketball, let's talk about the LeBron watch. The LeBron watch today, original retail was $42,000. When it first came out, it was kind of like, people weren't buying into it because, oh, it's just another limited edition AP. They kind of died down, but guess what? Those people that said that were absolutely wrong. LeBron is another one that everybody absolutely loves around the world. He's King James. He's arguably the best basketball player in the game that has ever lived. Of course, I'm still going to go with Michael Jordan, but LeBron is, again, not a bad bone in his body as an individual, as a family man, and as a basketball player. His watch today? Well, guess what? 2 days ago, we sold a LeBron James for $73,000, about 30 grand over its retail price, supply and demand. I've never had any customer buy a LeBron watch and sell it back. It is getting absolutely impossible to find them. It's a great looking watch. He's a great celebrity. He's a great ambassador, and his watches are selling like hotcakes. They didn't make it in the 48 millimeter. They made it in that 45 millimeter case. It's a wearable watch. It's a beautiful watch, and it's going to continue selling like hotcakes. And honestly, I hope AP does a re-edition of another LeBron. Last but not least, let's talk about Omega, and let's talk about Cindy Crawford. My generation, Cindy Crawford was the model that was hanging up in a poster in my room. I don't know about you guys, along with Halle Berry and a couple of others, but Cindy Crawford is an icon. She is an icon of beauty. As a guy flipping through a magazine, I start looking at advertising and I come upon Cindy Crawford's advertisement. And by the way, right now, Cindy Crawford's daughter is doing the Omega advertisements, and she's just as beautiful as her mother. And I'm flipping through the magazine and I'm like, oh, I'm looking for a gift for my wife, and I come across Cindy Crawford. And I'm like, I'm going to stop at that page no matter what. It's going to stop me dead in my tracks. I'm going to admire Cindy Crawford, and at the same token, there's going to be a watch on her wrist or on that particular page, which I'm going to pay attention to. And the next time I try to choose a gift for my wife, I'm going to say, you know what, let me get her that Omega Constellation because Cindy Crawford wears it. And, you know, I can relate to Cindy Crawford. I love Cindy Crawford. So it seems like a good gift. At the same token, a female is going to be flipping through the same magazine, and females do the same thing. They look at it and say, oh, wait a minute, it's Cindy Crawford, icon of beauty. She is definitely an iconic woman. What is she wearing? Oh, she is wearing this particular watch. I want this watch. It works that simple, the same way that girls go on Instagram and they look at the profiles of Kim Kardashian, what makeup she uses, or they look at Khloe Kardashian and see what dress she wears and so on and so forth, and they want to buy that same thing. Celebrities are effective, ambassadors are effective. It's been done through every single industry since any type of media has been alive, whether it was print, later internet, social media, and so on and so forth. If it wasn't effective, it would not be used. So hope that answers your questions. Yes, Beckham was effective for Breitling. Beckham is effective to Tudor, just like Cindy Crawford is effective for Omega, and a slew of other celebrities are effective for any other brand. Well, guys, that does it for this edition of Q&A Tuesday. I want to thank you guys for coming out again. Remember, put your questions for the next episode below so that I can answer them in the next edition of What's on My Desk. Also want to ask you guys for a favor and share some of these videos. In order for my channel to grow, the word needs to spread, and the only way to spread the word is for you guys to actually like my video, subscribe to my channel, share, and comment, because that shows that my channel is important to YouTube, and therefore it will organically grow. I don't pay money, or I don't advertise my channel anywhere, just because I want it to grow organically. I want people to follow me for the fact that they find the content interesting. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time on the next edition of Q&A Tuesday.